Hey, thanks for joining me. I'm Lee. Tomorrow is my Mike's birthday. He'll be turning 56. He doesn't look like it and he definitely doesn't act like it. We've been together about 13 years and he's been telling me how he misses poppy seed cake, also known as Mohnkuchen in Germany. I spent a few hours on Google, a lot of Google Translate, some forums, and I found a site that had the recipe. And this one's got a pastry bottom, a cheesecakey type of filling, and a streusel top. It looks delicious. The recipe calls for poppy seed fix, which you can buy off the shelf in Germany, and we can't buy it in Australia. On the site I found they had a recipe for it, and I made it yesterday and it was quite simple to make. Into a saucepan I put 240 ml of milk, just under a cup, and 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon powder, 2 teaspoons of vanilla essence, and 2 teaspoons of finely grated lemon zest. I stirred that around and I brought that to a boil. Once it came to a boil, I stirred in 70 grams of sugar and 300 grams of poppy seeds. And I simmered it at a low temperature, constantly stirring for about 2 minutes. And then I removed the pot from the heat and I let it cool down and I refrigerated it. And what happened was all the poppy seeds absorbed the milk. And that is going to go in the filling of the cake. It's a lot of poppy seeds. I'm so curious to know what this tastes like, but I'll get cooking. The first thing I'll do now is make the pastry, because that needs to go in the fridge for 30 minutes. I've got all my notes here. And I find the easiest way to do that is with a food processor. So into the food processor I put 225 grams of flour, 120 grams of white sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 120 grams of cold butter that I cut up and I actually put in the freezer for 15 minutes, so it's super cold. Now I'm going to blitz that. Until the butter is really tiny and dispensed through, which it is. Add 1 egg and 2 teaspoons of vanilla essence. And I'm going to see if that comes together. If it doesn't, I might have to add some ice water, which I've got here. And I didn't need to add any ice water. A lovely dough has formed, and I'll sort of roll it into a ball and I'll refrigerate it while I make the filling and the streusel topping. And I'm going to use my food processor for that as well. I put 150 grams of flour, 100 grams of sugar, 100 grams of cold butter, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon powder. I'm just going to mix it through until it sort of comes together and it forms a bit of a streusel topping. Perfect. So it's like that. Now the recipe says to refrigerate that while I make the filling. The recipe calls for quark, but we can't buy quark here. Well, you can, but it's hard to get and it's super expensive. And mascarpone cheese is a really great substitute for quark. It's got the same texture and it's not sweet. So all we have to do is mix 250 grams of mascarpone cheese. Then we add 200 grams of sour cream, 2 eggs, 120 grams of caster sugar, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla essence. And using my beater, I'm going to mix that all together until it's smooth. Now the recipe says to mix in a packet of instant pudding, vanilla instant pudding, and this is a 100-gram packet. And now I add the poppy seed fix, which I made yesterday. The texture's like sand. And I'll mix that in. that's the filling. Now it's time to assemble it all together. I'm going to preheat the oven, so I'm going to put it on a conventional oven, no fan, at 180 degrees. The recipe says a 26 centimetre springform pan, and that's what I'm using. I always like to line the bottoms of my pans. It just makes it easy to remove the cake, and it doesn't take long to do that. And I'm just going to put a little bit of butter on the bottom, and that will help that stick. And I'm also going to butter the sides of the pan, and then just take a little flour. This just makes sure that the cake tin is greased properly, and I just tap out excess flour. And I'm going to attempt to roll it. And the reason I say I'm going to attempt to roll it, because when I do pastry, it's always gluten-free flour, which is a bit different. But the recipe calls for normal flour, so if you're not gluten-free, just use the plain flour instead of the gluten-free. Because gluten-free flour is always that bit harder to work with. And the recipe says to take it 3 centimetres up the sides, so this pastry here will be perfect for that. Oh well, I tried. But it doesn't matter because we can just press it in like so, because it's a butter short crust. It's very forgiving. And I'm going to cover this pastry bottom anyway with the filling. A little bit rustic, but that doesn't matter. Now I get a fork and just prick the pastry in places. And then I get the lovely filling and spoon that in there. It's such an unusual colour with all those poppy seeds. I have to put this in the oven for about 20 or 25 minutes until like a skin forms on top, and then I take it out and then I'll crumble over the streusel topping and put it back in the oven for another 20 to 30 minutes. So it's been 30 minutes. My oven's on a bit on the slow side, and I can see that a lovely little skin has formed. The mixture is still wobbly, but now it's time to put the streusel topping on and then back into the oven. So I feel the skin needs to form in order to hold the streusel topping. But I have the streusel here that was in the fridge, and I'll just carefully put it on. It's gone really hard, so just lumps of it. It already smells so good, this cake. Right, I'll go and gently put it back in the oven for at least another 20 minutes. So that's had another 35 minutes in the oven. The streusel is nice and brown. It's still a bit wobbly, but I feel like it's going to firm up in the fridge a bit like a baked cheesecake. So I think it worked out. It looks and it smells delicious, but I won't know for sure until I give it to Mike tomorrow, and hopefully he'll let me film his reaction. See you tomorrow. So I'm just going to whip some cream to go with the cake. Mike loves cream. He's German, what can I say? And I'm just going to put a couple of tablespoons of icing sugar in there and a teaspoon of vanilla essence, just to flavour the cream. And before it's fully whipped, I'll just taste it to see if it needs any icing sugar or vanilla. Maybe another teaspoon of vanilla essence. Done. So the cake's been in the fridge all night. And I noticed yesterday it sunk a little bit in the middle, but just slightly. And I'm going to run a knife around the edge just to make sure it doesn't stick to the pan when I undo it. Has it stuck? No. And I'll just dust a little bit of icing sugar around the edge. Looks pretty. Right, let's see what it looks like inside. I say it's really rich, so you can get at least 3, 6, 12 pieces out of this, at least. The first piece is always the hardest. Whoa, that looks all right. And a dollop of cream. Show the world your t-shirt, love. Prost, prost, prost. Oi, oi, oi. And the sleeves?
This one's it.
Deutsch by birth and Aussie by choice. So cool. Ready? Okay, one. Oh, try it together. Have you had this one before? It's a Mohnstreusel. Is it Mohnstreusel?
Mohnstrudel.
Yeah, how do you say it?
Mohnstrudel.
Mohnstreusel.
Perfect.
Well, it's not bad, is it?
I told you. My mum used to make them.
Did your mother used to make this?
Yeah.
Is that how it's supposed to taste?
Yeah. Perfect.
Is that the poppy seed taste I can taste? It's a little bit like bitter. Is that what it's supposed to taste like?
Well, I said it's perfect.
So it's delicious.
Exactly as I know it. 100%. I think my mum always makes a tray.
Yeah.
Not like a round cake.
No.
Like a tray.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of them. They look good. Thanks, darling. Happy birthday.
What we see.